up, beautiful people? Welcome, welcome, welcome to another glorious day here in the NFT space where it's never a dull moment. I am your host, Todd Wanish, a 26-year veteran in comics and animation, and I guess 1 year OG in the NFT space. How are you guys doing tonight? How's everybody? It's kind of a crazy night. I will tell you that for those that hopped on yesterday to our town hall, you may remember me mentioning that this past weekend for Mother's Day, we went out. We went into like a mall, and like for the first time, we hadn't been to a mall in like 15 years or something. So of course, now that I've been around people other than my immediate family, I have a cold. So we hung up last night, and I was like, my throat feels a little weird. So if I sound a little raspy and a little sniffly, and I start sneezing and stuff, my bad, y'all. It's what happens when you live around comic books and not people. And I guess I should be more social. But anyway, it's been a pretty interesting 24 hours in the NFT space. We're going to talk about it at least from a unique perspective, or at least what I hope is a unique perspective. I think we got some good stuff to talk about. So before we jump in to tonight's topic, let's see who's here. What's up, Hype? How are you? Welcome. Beans. And Dusty's like, no more beans, Hype. What's up, Dusty? How are you? Willie D wants beans and secrets. Beans and or secrets. Absolutely. We need sweet secrets. And Dusty says, we actually spent about 20 minutes last night coming up with secrets just to keep from J-Raw. Yeah, J-Raw was going on and on about the secrets we were supposed to be releasing, and I had no idea what he's talking about. But I did see that he actually has put it as a reminder now on his phone or something. Like he's actually posted a picture of like his his calendar or something has a daily reminder of asking me about secrets. It's pretty funny. It's pretty awesome. I appreciate it. Sense of humor is always appreciated, especially in bear markets and bull markets and whatever, polar bear markets and whatever kind of market you want to call like today. I don't know what it is today. I know it's down. Everybody's kind of like, woe is me about it. If this is your first rodeo in NFTs, like, if the market goes down 50%, we call that a Tuesday. So it's not really, it's really not that big of a deal. I know it hurts and it's painful. You just kind of have to ride it out and do the best you can. That is very par for the course in this space. It's higher risk, higher reward, and that's I think one of the number one things about the NFT space or the blockchain space, the crypto space, is that if you want safe, you can keep your money in a savings account, and it might be safe, but you'll be losing it every single day with due to inflation. You can be a little more risky and moving into something like USDC and maybe stake it a little bit and earn like a 9% APY, and at least you'll be matching, at least temporarily, until inflation passes it. You'll at least be matching inflation, kind of breaking even on your money. Or you can go into crypto, which is more risky than just a stable coin, of course. And I always think that NFTs are the most riskiest proposition. Highest reward. I've never seen anything like it. There's never been anything on this earth that has the potential to move as fast as NFTs in terms of value. But it's also the riskiest asset class I've ever seen. It's just a baby. It's an infant. There's not a lot of rules. So, and that's actually what we're going to talk about a little bit tonight. So, what we're going to talk about here is this post from she's Lauren Lee, and so this is not going to be specifically about Azuki, but Azuki has started a lot of conversations, some of which I think are worth discussing. And so Um, we're going to try our best to take all of the heat out of it, and some of the tone out of it, and from this person's perspective, and talk about the actual core of the argument, because I do think there's value in the actual argument itself. So she starts by saying, the Azuki debacle makes one thing abundantly clear to me. MF or mob mentality will kill NFTs. Project leaders are never allowed to fail, and that's fucking dangerous. Here's why. So again, I'm going to try to, I want to remove Azuki from it necessarily, because it's not really about Azuki. And I want to kind of detone her perspective, because it's written a little hot. But as a startup founder and someone who has been in tech for over a decade now, there are some very valid points she makes, and it's worth bringing it up and talking about. So she says, when a project fails, the degens who invested their precious 0.02 ETH become infuriated and rally together to cancel the founder and label him an evil mastermind rugger. Not incapable, not incompetent, but evil. Like I said, she has a little bit of a hot angle and a hot edge to her words, like precious 0.02. I mean, so I want to kind of depower that. But I do want to talk about some of the things that I've seen and some of the things that I think are applicable. For instance, it is true that the NFT space doesn't understand or care about failure. And it's very different than startups. When a startup fails and the founder has tried his or her best to do everything they can to save the company, whether it's through raising more and more money, or pivoting, or trying new angles on things. And, sometimes you just don't do it. Sometimes it just doesn't happen. You just don't get product market fit. And so you have no choice. You've run out of cash, or your investors are leaving, or they're not going to fund you anymore. And so you don't have a choice but to kind of fold the company. When that happens, it's devastating to everyone. Of course, it's devastating to, if you're a startup, your customers, right? The people that trust you, the team that you hire, and no one takes it harder, in my experience, than the founder themselves, because they're the ones who have put in probably the most blood, sweat, and tears. One of the saving graces in startup land is that the founder is usually not held responsible for the failure. And what I mean by that is that they take personal responsibility for failing, but they're not held accountable for it. Meaning, and this is actually something really interesting for the US, and some other countries are different. In the US, if you raise $10 million and you go through the money and you do your best, and the company fails, you don't owe the investors anything. Meaning most of the venture deals, most of the venture firms and VCs understand that they are taking a risk. They're looking for outsized returns. They know that 9 out of every 10 investments they make are going to bomb. They're only looking for that one home run, because that one home run can recoup all of that investment and make a fortune, right? You only need one Facebook, for instance. So when the founder fails, it's not seen as evil or a complete disaster, right? It can be a disaster. I should change that. But the person's not seen as being evil or malicious, and they certainly don't owe the VCs all that money back. The VCs kind of lick their wounds and move on. And what happens more often than not is that the entrepreneur actually has a little more cachet, because failing is rewarded, meaning you've learned something, you've done it. Most people don't launch anything ever in any capacity. So to launch something and fail still puts you ahead of anyone who has 100% success rate and not doing anything. So oftentimes, first-time founders who do fail find it much easier to even go back to the same VCs and ask for more money for a different venture, which is very unique. Think about it. Like, here's a group of people who are giving you several, in some cases, millions of dollars. You fail, you lose all that money, and you go back to them and ask them for more for a different project. And they're like, yeah, okay. You actually have a better chance of raising as a failed founder on a second startup than as someone who's never failed and never launched on a first startup. Getting that first raise is always the most difficult. So, and that's actually very unique. And there are other countries where that law, there are laws where if you are a startup founder and you raise capital from VCs, you are responsible for paying those VCs back. And that changes the complete dynamic. That's why the US in the 20th century led innovation, because, a country where you don't have to pay the venture capitalists back tens of millions of dollars, compared to a country or a culture where you do pay them back tens of millions of dollars. Like, if you're in your 20s and you have a brilliant idea and you borrow tens of millions of dollars, and you fail and you owe that money back to people, like, that's your life, right? And because of that, you are much less inclined in those situations to be innovative or to be an entrepreneur. So our entrepreneurial spirit gets crushed in a lot of other cultures and a lot of other countries because of the demand or the cultural demand to pay that money back or not be able to take as much risk or what have you. So we have a very lenient system, and a very understanding system for it. It doesn't make it easy to fail, but it makes it at least not, you're not a boon, you're not a bane to your family and to your entire culture if you make a mistake and fuck up. So she says, I'll read that again. When a project fails, the degens who've invested their precious 0.02 ETH become infuriated and rally together to cancel the founder and label him an evil mastermind rugger. Not incapable, not incompetent, but evil. And that is true. A lot of projects fail. 90% of all NFT projects are going to fail, probably higher. I think the statistic for regular startups is like 92%. I would be willing to just guess that for NFTs, it's going to be like 96, 98%. Most of these projects are not going to be here in 5 years. And that's not necessarily that they're evil, or a rugger. It's just a lot of them are unexperienced. It's a fun space. It's a fun space that people want to jump into, So, and I have seen it where projects fail and they just not. I mean, I've watched it where founders have said, and NFT projects have said, "Hey, we didn't find product fit. We don't have the funding to continue. We're really sorry. We love this. We're going to put this as open source and do that and set up everything the best we can. And we really wish we could continue, but we can't." And I've even seen those people labeled as rugging or evil or whatever. It's a very challenging thing, I think, for people, for founders. She says, of course, they have a right to assume the morality of these horrible founders. Every degen play is by design. Fully expecting to transmute into Alex Becker, they're shocked to find that they're the same skinny, broke virgins they always were. Now they're faced with a choice. Again, I'm taking the sting out of what she says. I think this is written with a lot of passion, and I understand that. But for our debate, for our discussion, we want to kind of actually bring it to the intellectual side, not the emotional side. Now they're faced with a choice: either take responsibility for being a fucking idiot, a hard pill to swallow, or participate in the collective emergence delirium of the rugged mob. Considering that half the Twitter accounts I come across in the space were built on drama, you know what happens next. It's very true. Twitter is 100% drama. And I don't think it's necessarily taking responsibility for being an idiot for believing in a project. There are plenty of brilliant projects that are phenomenal that still don't hit market fit. So it's not a personal thing. It's not saying, oh, I'm an idiot, so I'm going to attack them for being ruggers. I think there's a genuine misconception on what success looks like, and I think there's a genuine misconception on what failure looks like. And I think the overall problem in the NFT space is that any failure is seen as a rug. It's instantly a scam. It's instantly a dishonest person. And the misconception is that, well, hey, we did this mint and you raised, X number of millions of dollars, and now you're closing up shop because it didn't work out. Like, there's a misconception that because you make a lot of money in something, that means the business is working or can continue to work, and that's not necessarily true. You know what I mean? It's really not. I mean, if behind the scenes, if $1 million sounds like a lot of money unless you're hiring people. You know what I mean? If you have a team, you're not. It's not like you're buying a Lambo. You know what I mean? It's not. It's not as much as you think it might be. So, again, I want to take a little bit of the sting out of this a little bit. But it's true that Twitter accounts start to attack because Twitter loves drama, and it's much easier to attack somebody than to defend somebody. The project leaders, what happens next. The project leaders are publicly crucified. Tweets get louder, the accusations get crazier, conspiracies abound, and everyone starts feeling the vindication. I mean, hell, if we're all stupid motherfuckers together, then is everyone really stupid? Nah, it's those damn project leaders. So she's talking about everyone kind of turning their angst and their anger or their they're being upset and pushing it towards the project leader. I do think that of course that comes with the territory. Like, anytime a project fails, the person at the top is always going to take the heat. That's kind of in the job description. But I also understand that it can be damn hard to. It's one thing if people attack you for being stupid or not being able to manage a business. It's another thing when they attack your character and your honesty and your morality and your entire being as a person. It's a little different, and the internet is brutal and cruel. The sad part of this is that while there are some evil founders, most of them aren't. They're just royal fuck-ups. They have no experience in executive leadership, no prior business experience. They're probably young, and they don't know how teams should operate. 100% true. You got to remember, a lot of these NFT projects are just friends saying, "Hey, let's do this cool thing together." Right? "Hey, I have this idea. Let's do this cool thing together." And they're not necessarily, if you've never had business experience before, and you've never actually built a product or launched a product before, it's a huge learning curve, let me tell you. So, and I think, people need to be allowed to fail. And I think she's going to get to that, and I hope we get to talk about that. And if we don't, you and I will talk about it. We'll discuss it because it's important. Failure is incredibly important to the development process for most businesses, for most people. Any Web 2.0 entrepreneur will tell you that they failed 5,000 times before succeeding. I know I did. Entrepreneurs have to learn that shit, often at the expense of customers IRL. It's not just publicly recorded on the blockchain or labeled as a scam. This is true. Most founders, have to fail in order to succeed. Most athletes have to suck first in order to get better and become great. We're in this weird spot where, like, what if, Michael Jordan, to become Michael Jordan had to miss like tens of thousands of shots, right? He had to blow dozens or hundreds of games, right, in his youth to become the great player that he is, the legend, right? We're living in a time, because every single stroke is recorded. It'd be like, it's almost like, imagine a teenager who decides to play baseball and they want to be in the MLB, and they step up to the plate and they swing and they miss, and that's the first time they've ever been at bat. They swing and they miss, and instantly everyone says they suck, and it's recorded permanently that they missed, and therefore they're a failure because they didn't hit a grand slam their first time up to bat, right? A lot of that is what we're doing to people who are in the space, who are launching projects, right? Another way to look at it would be, okay, so maybe that kid gets up to bat and hits the ball and get on base, and as they get around the base, maybe there's like 2 outs or something, and our founder is coming in and running home and gets out, and therefore loses the game for everybody because they made a mistake. And and that's permanent, and they're labeled like the worst player in the history of anything. Like they're just completely tossed to the trash bin of history. And I think that's very dangerous for people, and it's bad for people's mental health, man. Um, in Web3, the mob rules, and the majority of the mob has never run a fucking business. They've never tried anything of note. They're here to make a milli without leaving mom's basement. In order to succeed here, you better succeed the first time, or you're canceled forever and we will hate you and you'll basically be considered a criminal. Failure is now criminal. And that is the danger. If people can't try their best and if they're not allowed to fail, you're not going to have any innovation. You're not going to have people who are actually making an attempt at doing something, because who wants to be labeled a criminal? You know what I mean? You can't, it's this is honestly, I believe this is why you have so many people who are not doxxed in the space, because they want the ability to continue to work, right? Like if they're labeled a criminal or they've done something horrible or whatever, it's true, they get canceled forever, they're hated forever, and they're labeled a criminal. Well, how does that person try to start another company or start another project or do anything, because they'll never be able to outrun their past because everything is documented. So it's a very trying position. It takes a lot of guts, I think, to be doxxed in a world where failure is criminalized, right? She says, anyone who wants to create in the space better be fucking terrified. And with doxed founders becoming the norm, stakes are even higher. There you go. People are already scared to start a business because they fear they will fail. In Web3, that's made exponentially worse. 100% true. There are plenty of founders that are terrified. And, one of the reasons, again, to go by a G.I. Joe name or something is so that if it fails and when it fails, again, if you're a founder and you have any experience, you have a 90% chance of failure, right? So if you're 90% chance of failing, you don't want that to like scar you for life and be labeled a criminal and basically ruin your entire future, where you're just going to have to work at McDonald's for real, because anytime you try 20 years from now, when you try your next business, there's going to be someone on Twitter or whatever replaces Twitter saying, hey, I remember you from back in the day, you're a criminal. That's terrifying. That's absolutely terrifying. Innovation in Web3 is dying because talented people are scared shitless. I love a good meme culture, but it's time to stop glorifying degen buys where everyone acts like investing with zero research is cool and projects are responsible for mooning every time. It's time you MFers take some personal responsibility and learn how to invest your ETH. Stop investing in projects where you don't know the talent of the team. And if you're willing to risk on one, don't demonize them for failing. 100%. Like there's been plenty of NFT projects and plenty of crypto projects where I've gone in and it was a bad decision, right? And I've never once blamed the team, even on the ones that were definite rugs, right? Let me put it this way, outside of absolute scams where, and we're going to talk about that. I think we have some time. I'll share with you another article that talks about what the definition of a rug is, because I think it's fascinating and it's worth discussing. There's a big difference between a scam artist that is a legit rug and a team that just doesn't have it, or an idea that just doesn't go through with it. And I think I'm a very big believer in personal responsibility. I always blame myself. I'm never gonna, again, unless it's even if it's a huge scam, it's my fault. You know what I mean? If I get into something, if I do my research and I do everything I can and it turns out to be a complete rug, well, then whose responsibility is that? Well, yeah, some of it is on the criminal, because that is criminal behavior, in my opinion, right? But the blame is on me. Like, I'm the one that put my money into it. So I clearly missed some signals or some signs, or I got took, you know what I mean? And you just got to move on with it. But most projects, 99% of them that are out there, are legit and trying their best. They might not, what people presume as a rug is a lot of times just straight up like immaturity, ignorance, and lack of understanding of how to actually build a business. You know what I mean? One of the reasons I have so much confidence in adult fantasy is because this is like my seventh business. like, and my first ones were horrible. Like they I did comics, I did toys. I've got this stuff behind me. Like this is all like to remind me, this is all product that I paid for and made myself and had made in China and shipped all over the world. And I had partnerships over here, and I had apparel lines, and I did comic books and all this stuff. And it took me a very long time to understand the other side of business, not just the craft of creating a product. I got very, very good at making a high quality, beautiful object very early. But it was the business side and the marketing side that was such a flaw for me. And that took years. It took years to get better, and it took years to improve. And it continues to this day. Even coming into the NFT space, like I had a pretty high degree of confidence. My background, working with startups, like I understand digital marketing and Facebook ads and ad manager and all that kind of stuff. I've run tons of ads. But it was a complete learning curve coming into the Web3 space because nobody uses Facebook ads for Web3. It's Twitter and it's Discord, and Discord doesn't have advertising, and Twitter ads blow. So it's like, okay, shit, like, what do you do? Like and it's only because of my past experience that says, oh, okay, cool, this is new. But I'm able to adjust, and we were able to kind of start to figure out, and we're starting to grow, right? It's the experience that you have through going through different startups and businesses gives you confidence in knowing that you can handle all the fires that come up. It's not that, some of the problems that come up you've seen before and you've dealt with a million times, great. And the ones that don't, the brand new problems, like things that are specific to Web3, you at least have the confidence of having dealt with situations similar or having dealt with enough fires in your life as an experienced entrepreneur that you're like, okay, cool, well, we'll figure it out, let's just do it. And that's something that takes time. You know what I mean? Like our history with startups, I mean, again, the reason I have confidence is because when we first started launching companies, and it wasn't like we were launching like a million different companies. Like we launched one and it wouldn't work. We couldn't do it. And no matter how hard we tried, our sales, I mean, first we couldn't even sell anything. And then we finally got some sales, but the product wasn't good. And you just kind of move and grow and grow and grow. And what happened with us is like, you go through a process from early on in my early 20s. It went from losing money, making really cool shit, but like basically losing money multiple times, to then finally figuring out, like, I just started documenting shit. I said, okay, this is what worked, this is what didn't work. And I started to do this for every single project I worked on until I had a framework. And what happened over time is that I went from like failing to breaking even to making a small profit to doing well enough to where I was independent and doing it, and now I'm making profits and growing businesses. So and advising others and mentoring and all of that. So it just takes a long time. Some people get it straight out of the block, man. I mean, you've got young founders who just know what everything falls into place and they know what the fuck to do. For me, it took 20 years. So I don't think we need to demonize, again, taking out the specifics of current events. In general, I don't think it's wise to demonize founders who are doing their best, because you never know. The person who fails today will be the person 5 years from now that just knocks it out of the park and invents something that everybody fucking uses and everybody loves. Let's see, we got some awesome comments. Willie D says, good point about doxing. Yeah, it's really, I mean, everyone, there's such a movement to like, to be doxed and to be who you are. But you have to understand the flip side of it is like, a lot of founders, there's a lot of people, there's a lot of real world jobs that hate NFTs and hate blockchain and hate crypto. And so that's one reason that people stay hidden, because they don't want to lose their real world jobs, or they don't want to be ostracized from their career path. And then there's the other side where they don't want to be ostracized from Web3. Like, there's a real danger for some people, depending on their careers, right? Where if they're doxxed, if their project goes south and they're doxxed, not only will they never work in their chosen profession again, they'll never be able to work in Web3 again either. I mean, that's a complete life destruction. That is a complete annihilation of possibly years or decades of education and dedication to a craft or skill. So I think it's really serious. And you can't, you got to be careful what you wish for. Like, personally, I think most teams should be doxxed, and I think at least most people on the team should be doxxed, right? Like ours is. Like at least one person on the team needs to be fully doxxed so that they can be like contacted. You know what I mean? I do think that's important. With that said, the industry has to make a choice. If you want people to be doxxed, then don't destroy their lives if they fail. Otherwise, we're never going to get out of this. And you're going to have more scams, because the more people are hidden, the easier it is for scam artists and legitimate ruggers to prosper. So you can't take everyone out. Otherwise, you're gonna get taken more and more. It's a little bit of a double-edged sword, right? Hype says failure is one thing, purposeful scams is another thing completely. 100%. And I'm not talking about purposeful scams. Purposeful scams, those people, that I also think the problem with calling everybody a rugger is that you're devaluing when people are actually rugged, right? Like, if everything is a rug, then nothing is a rug. And that's not true. Like, what is true is that there are some legit scammers out there, and they're using NFTs and they're using crypto to drain wallets. And those people need to be called out and put in the category of ruggers, so that everyone knows to stay away from these people for the rest of their lives. You do not want to lump startup founders who just failed into that category, right? Like, you're criminalizing failure. You're criminalizing an attempt. And I think it actually like softens the blow for actual criminality, right? Dusty says, if anything, you see failures for projects not being innovative and following what works before them. Yep, very true. Hype says, part of the issue, though, is that a lot of projects basically say that the purchasers will make money. Right, and I think that's another problem, right? I think, this is also a double-edged sword in that, just spilled liquid all over me. Anyway, so I think it's another double-edged sword where, based in, at least in the US, you're not allowed to say, and granted, I'm not an expert in SEC stuff, do your own research. This is just kind of common knowledge stuff. Like, you can't call, as a project founder, it is ill-advised for you to call your project an investment. Because if it's an investment vehicle, then you're running into the SEC, right? They're collectibles and they're assets. Collectibles can appreciate. Collectibles can be investments, but they are collectibles first, not investments. And I have seen people get hammered by people in their own community saying, why won't you call it an investment? We're an investor. They won't even recognize that we're investors. And I get that. But there are legal reasons they can't do it, right? And I do think that's a problem. Hype is like, I honestly, I also think that ties back into like, A, they may not know, and B, they might just be young. Like, I see it all the time, like, buy this and we'll split revenue and we'll go back and do this and the other thing and we'll fractionalize this or that. And like, they haven't done their research. And they don't understand, either maybe they're not in the US, or maybe there's different rules. I don't know. But it certainly seems like they're not really fully understanding the consequences of what they're proposing. And so these are things that there's a lot of projects now that I think that offer that and talk about that. Hey, you buy our thing and you're going to make money. There's plenty of those out there right now, and I think those are probably the first to go when the SEC cracks down, man. Like those are projects that are going to fail because they're not going to be allowed to operate because it's against the law. So, and again, they might not even know it. You just don't know. I always try to give people the benefit of the doubt. To I think there's a lot of naivete out there. Uh, Hype says, "Oh yes, so they set up these expectations for their customers." Yep. Um, Willie D says, "I would hope if you're sincere in your attempt to succeed, even if you fail, it's recoverable." It should be, right? And I think that's the that's the question. Is like, um, it should be, and usually it is. Except now that everything is public, there's like this public like flogging and humiliation that you have to go through. Like if a popular project went down tomorrow, right? Um, Pick any of them, it doesn't even matter. Like if it completely went down, if you had something that was worth 10, 20, 30, 40 ETH and it went to zero, um, that's a public flogging that's going to sting, and it's going to be very difficult to recover because it's so public, and because people, while emotionally understandably upset that the thing that they purchased is now worth zero, I also think this I also think that that's kind of where the next step is with the NFT space in general, is that the floor and the value of the NFT, the digital asset, um, should at least, I think, I want to say it should come secondary. I know it's a primary concern, obviously. Um, However, um, I think the people that get the most upset with these things are the people who buy in, considering it as an investment and not considering it for whatever the utility is for the project. Does that make sense? It's very hard. NFTs are a weird thing because it does go hand in hand. There's definitely a tie. Like, I don't, if as a I don't know. What's a SaaS app that you subscribe to? Um, you know, um, Active Campaign. So Active Campaign is an email autoresponder app, right? So it allows you to auto send campaigns and set up email paths. It's pretty cool. Um, if I pay uh, Active Campaign and Active Campaign goes away, I might get upset from losing my information, but I'm not going to get upset for a loss of, and some kind of investment. I don't feel like I own a piece of the company because of the monthly subscription that I pay for, right? With NFTs, it's a little different because there's the flipping nature of the digital asset. You actually own something that has value. Um, Likewise, though, it's really interesting. If Marvel went under tomorrow and just disappeared off the face of the earth, um, I wouldn't be upset. I've paid for all these comic books from Marvel, right? And graphic novels. I wouldn't all of a sudden say, well, these are worthless and worth zero. Like I would say, well, you know, it's pretty dope. I mean, I still have everything that I paid for. So it's a very interesting dynamic, and I think it's one of those things that we really have to figure out. Dusty says, I would agree with the sentiment. If one gives it 120% over a good period of time and it just doesn't work out, I think it's unfair to fault them. Yeah, I think, and maybe a lot of that from the team. It comes from the team. Like if the team is communicative versus doesn't talk. Certainly, one of the issues, again, without going too deep into Azuki, one of the criticisms that have been lobbed at the main guy was that for the past project they just kind of turned it off. Like it didn't work, and they were like, "All right, it didn't work. Peace out." And they just kind of left people hanging, and that's not a cool thing to do. That's kind of lame, very lame. Part of the problem, though, is most people aren't you, though. Yes, yes, yes. If the world was more like me, no, I do think, you know, I think it's just experience. I really do. I really do. Hype says, personally, I think people should or need to understand that there is risk when they purchase. Yes, there's risk when you purchase, and people need to, the biggest challenge is that on a conscious level, we know we're buying in to the utility of the thing, meaning I'm buying in when I buy when there's a new project out there and I'm reading the white paper or I'm looking at the team or I'm looking at the art or whatever my judgments are, my internal judgment criteria for the project. I can look at that and I can say, "Oh, this looks awesome." When I pay money, when I'm minting something or I buy it off secondary, consciously, consciously, I'm buying into the idea of the project. I really make an effort to say, I believe in this concept. I am going to support this concept. I do see it a little bit like a seed investment, but I see it from the perspective of an investor. Whereas if the whole thing fails and my NFT is worth zero, oh well, that, what are you going to do about it? You know what I mean? Okay. I think for a lot of people, though, it becomes harder when they buy into the idea or the utility or the concept of the project, and then that NFT price starts to rise, right? People aren't necessarily mad. Okay, and I'm going to go a little bit into Azuki land here, but I think people aren't necessarily mad about everything that's going on with the team. I think they are on a high level, but I think a lot of the emotional, on an intellectual level, they're mad at the team because they're like, "Yo, that was not handled well. You guys should have done something better." Fine, maybe it was an honest mistake, maybe not, whatever. But intellectually, it could have been done better. But the emotional side comes in when you buy something, you know, when you buy something and it goes down in value. The people who minted Azuki at like floor or right after mint are probably less likely to be upset at it going up to what, 28 ETH and then down back to 17 and maybe dropping to 9, because they're like, I'm still 9 ETH in, like it's not as great as it was, but which sucks, but maybe it comes back. The people that are upset are the people that bought it at like 27. They bought the top and then it tanks, and they feel like they've lost everything, or a large part of their income. And those people most likely bought for different reasons than trust in the project. Not saying that they don't trust the project. It's just that trusting the project was only 1 degree, whereas the investment side was a consideration as well. Right. Yeah, let's see. Bad Kitty says, very insightful. I never realized that the risk that could come with doxing. This environment can be pretty harsh if you fail. It's brutal. It'll tear you up. Massive says, we're a long way from collectibles. Yeah, it's true, right? He says, if you're buying a collectible, there's no promise of utility or return from the collectible. This is true. It was like utility 1.0, right? Like when I bought comics, when I started getting into comics, it was because of the art and I wanted to be an artist. And so I was inspired by the work and the stories, and the utility that I found in it was my friendship circle. So I still a lot of those kids that I went to the comic shop with when I was like 15 and 14 and 13, I still hang out with today. I still talk to them regularly today. So the utility 1.0 was the community. I think you see that bootstrapped fast now. That's why Discord is so popular and everything, because people understand that you have to have a community to support the project. But I do understand, you do make a good point that there wasn't necessarily anything other than a one-way transaction where it was like, hey, here's this thing. I have made this collectible thing, go buy it. And then you own it, and whether it becomes valuable or not valuable, whatever, you know what I mean? There's plenty of baseball cards that aren't worth anything and comics that aren't worth anything. I think that's one of those things that makes Web3 so unique, is that it's a combo, right? These are collectibles. There's no doubt that these are collectibles. However, the technology and the technology angle of it and the ability to do other things with it really pushes it into a completely different category, And I mean, people are even coming up with new words for it, right? Like NFI for NFT finance or whatever. Like it's a very I think it needs to work itself out, but I think the first way to work itself out is to allow founders the ability to fail. And again, it's not even just the NFT side, crypto as well. I have no doubt, and granted, I'm more on the NFT side than the crypto side, but I have no doubt that there are plenty of Web3 blockchain companies that are bombing or will fail, and their users will tear them apart. Maybe not as bad as NFTs, maybe not as bad, because at least with the crypto side of things, it feels more like a traditional company, whereas NFTs often present themselves as movements or cultures. That might be the difference. Hype says, this is why my friends who are OGs in the space tell me they focus on onboarding people with discussion about financial responsibility and mental health. Very smart. Yeah. They onboard people with discussion. Does that mean they talk? What does that mean, Hype? Does that mean that as they onboard new people, they talk about financial responsibility, and like those are topics that they discuss with new people? That's fascinating. If that's the case, that makes a lot of sense. That's a good way. It's an interesting way to prepare new people and to protect themselves. I think that's very smart. Very smart. Bad Kitty says it's a huge responsibility when you have people's money behind you, but it's not realistic to expect perfection. Right. And we're also in the land of fad and roller coasters, meaning you don't know, none of us know which projects are gonna be the ones that 25 years from now are still here. And I guarantee you it's probably not the ones, adult fantasy being the exception to the rule, of course. But for most projects, like you just don't know. Like Bored Ape Yacht Club, Yuga is huge today. It doesn't mean they're going to be here in 5 years. It just doesn't. Like $450 million or none. Like it doesn't matter. Um, fads look like massive takeovers. Do you guys remember fidget spinners? Like fidget spinners were a massive thing for about a year and a half, and now they're nowhere. Like fidget spinners are a classic example of a fad. Where that market, the fidget spinner market, was like billions of dollars, way bigger. Those little spinny things, way bigger than Yuga Labs, right? And just gone, like came and went. So, if you were the inventor of that in the Web3 space, you'd probably never have the opportunity to work again. That would be seen as a massive rug, right? Maybe a slow rug or something, like, because it was huge and everyone was in it, and then no one was in that, and nobody cared anymore, and it must be your fault. It's very hard. Perfection is a big thing. Yep. Hype says we need to stop calling these blue chips too. I 100% agree. 100% agree. The only blue chips that I would consider blue chips are people that come in, artists right now, who come into the space, who have a decades plus long history of records, like record sales, right? That's what blue chips are. And just because you're blue chip in fine art doesn't mean you're going to be a blue chip NFT. But I do think you can claim, like Damien Hirst is a blue chip artist who came into the NFT space. Doesn't mean that currency is going to be a blue chip piece, but it's from a blue chip artist. Period. Like there is no discussion about that, because he's in the history books because of his market cap and because of the value of his work. Same thing with Jeff Koons. Same thing with Urs Fischer, who is doing NFTs now. Maybe Daniel Arsham is kind of like a little bit under that, like second tier. Takashi Murakami is a blue chip artist, although I'm not a big fan of his NFT launch. It is okay to pull some social proof from another area to say this is a blue chip artist or this is a blue chip company, or if you want. But but to apply it to an NFT so soon is not. I agree with you. If Yuga Labs is still Yuga Labs 10 years from now, meaning like if Bored Ape continues to have a floor that increases or stays where it is, if any company really had that for an extended period of time, then it's blue chip. Then it's blue chip. Blue chip does not mean it went from 0 to 100 ETH in 6 months. That's not blue chip. That is, again, that could be a fad. As we just saw, what happened today? What happened to blue chip Azuki? You know what I mean? Azuki's blue chip, it rocketed to, what was it, like 28 ETH, way faster than Bored Ape did. And now it's all the way back down, right? What happened to Cool Cats, right? It went up to like 14 or 18 ETH or something like that, and it came all the way back down. So you can't, it's not fair to call these blue chips either. I agree. Hype. It's too much. It puts too much pressure on, and it makes an assumption that, um, that it's permanent. Blue chips tend to be permanent. You buy an Andy Warhol piece, it's blue chip. Like you can buy an Andy Warhol piece, and it's a pretty good bet that you can pass it along to your kids and grandkids, and it'll hold its value. Picasso as well, right? Everyone knows Picasso. Picasso's a brand name. He's a household name. If you own a Picasso, it's a pretty good bet you can sell it tomorrow. It's also a pretty good bet you could give it to your kids, your grandkids, your great grandkids, and it would retain its value over time. It is a blue chip. Something that's been out for a year is not blue chip. Period. Right? Dusty agrees, 100%. Yeah. So I find it really fascinating. Hype says there are a lot of tweets today about how they wanted to do generational wealth with their Azuki. That's what's wrong with the market. Yeah, a lot of that. Well, they're also young. I mean, I was looking at how many times have you seen in the NFT space or crypto space, or hell, even just the regular marketing space, where like some 19-year-old kid or some 20-year-old kid is good at business and they end up making like 7 or 8 figures, and like all you see is their watch collection or their like 7 cars. Like it's silly and it's stupid, and it's a really great way to go broke, because when the tide turns, your car ain't going to be worth shit. So I think it's, generational wealth with their Azuki. I mean, maybe if you had sold it and then reinvested it and continued to build for 20 years. I do agree. Yeah, there's a lot of tweets today about how they wanted. Well, there's a lot of tweets about how they wanted to, because it's past tense for now, right? It's not going to happen right now. Again, if you've been in this game for a minute, there are multiple projects that you've been in that went all the way up and went all the way down and just never recovered, right? And all you can do is be like, son of a bitch, I should have sold it. like, damn it. Oh, like, why didn't I sell it when it was worth $1 bazillion? Oh, well, that's the way it goes. Yeah, win Lambo. Exactly. So, yeah, I mean, there's more to this. And a lot of people are taking Azuki to task. There's a difference between a project leader failing and a project leader rugging. Yes, there's a huge difference, but no one seems to recognize that in this space. To them, it's all rugging, 100%. Like, we need to recognize failure, and we need to recognize failure for what it is, which is a remarkable attempt and a miss at something great. It doesn't necessarily mean that the person is not great. It doesn't necessarily mean that the person is a failure. It's hard enough on the founder. And I know this, like, I'm very fortunate that I've never had these issues, but I know a lot of founders who have, when their company fails, I mean, there's like thoughts of suicide and mental collapse and depression and everything you might expect by taking it personally. And I think that is compounded when you take it personally as a personal failure, as when you're internalizing that, and then the entire internet is like reinforcing that you're a complete failure. You know what I mean? And I think that's the problem. I think if we're not careful, you're going to start to see articles within the next couple of years, like you do with startups, where founder of you know love bug NFT commits suicide because the project didn't work, and people were tearing them apart. You know what I mean? Like it really um, can damage a person. It's very hard. It's very hard. And of course, people are kind of going um, going on about Azuki, of course. Um, Killfi says disagree, not specifically in relation to Azuki. Don't know much about that, but fail is greater than rug all day long. Huge difference, I guess. Fail as much as you like, but be honest and have some integrity if you do. Don't bullshit and scam while showing a different face. Yeah, 100%. She says, yep, huge difference between rugging and failing, and people should learn what the difference is. Yeah. Um, so I wanted to share this because I do think, oh, here we go. Let's see this one. Project leaders are allowed to fail. They're allowed to put effort and try. And if it doesn't work, project leaders can hand over the project with the ETH to the community to try. Project leaders aren't allowed to yeet with the cash and start new projects every month. And she says who though? In Web 2, people use their experience and or revenue from one failed business to start another. What makes this different? Let's see if there's what else she says. Yes, but what exactly is a failed business? The business's valuation going to zero after using the resources from investors to try and make the business work. In this case, the resource, the ETH, was transferred from the project wallet and the owner yeeted, which is a crime IRL. That's not 100% true. I mean, you get paid to work on a startup. The investors pay you to work on a startup. Like you're paying yourself a salary. And there are multiple contracts that you can create for yourself. So it's not exactly true to say that. I mean, you don't like leave a failed startup dead broke. You can. It happens all the time. But I know people who have walked away from failed startups with millions of dollars, and it's not anything nefarious. It's just the way the contract worked. It's similar to a guy pitching a business idea, pulling in capital from investors and taking the capital and running away, aka a scam, which is legally a crime. He even came back in January just to take away the rest of the ETH. Okay, for the royalties. Again, I want to be a little careful because I'm not really talking specifically about Azuki. So the specifics of Azuki are certainly their own to go about it. Okay, but there's a right and wrong way to go about it. Example: this person had StarCats before Alien Friends, which didn't take off but was never hidden from the world. He rewarded those holders with allow list spots for the next project and tried again. Actual transparency. Yeah, and then so maybe there's an example of how to do it right. I just think we need to be careful of from people who don't learn or know magically how to do the right thing, because it's not always so clear. But anyway, that's what I have. What do you guys think? You guys have been really active. I really appreciate your conversation in this because I do think it's a real it's a real issue. It's a real thing. And my fear is that it really can stifle innovation if we're not careful. It's okay to call a failure, and it's okay to call a rug. It's just for entrepreneurs and founders and projects where the project just doesn't work out. It's really dishonest. Not dishonest. It's really it hurts everybody when that person is pushed into a category that they don't actually belong in, and it can do some serious emotional damage and some serious mental damage. So we want to be careful. Again, present topic excluded. I'm not, that'll work itself out. I'm just talking in the general idea of, the difference between failed project and rug, you can't put everything in the category of rug. It's not fair. It's going to destroy a tremendous amount of innovation as people choose not to put everything on the line because they don't want to have their lives destroyed if they don't knock a home run right out of the gate. You don't want that. So, with that said, thank you guys so much for joining me tonight. Again, thanks for putting up with my sniffliness and my little cold here. Hope it wasn't too bad. Hope it doesn't come through on video too much. But yeah, we should party. We should hit up an after party. Hype says there are a lot of tweets. Oh, yeah, we saw that. Yep. So I think we should hop over, lighten it up a little bit. We'll hop over into Discord. We'll have an after party. We'll blow up some eggs or scribble. Is that what we're doing tonight? We're gonna draw some stuff. That should be cool. That's always fun. That's always hilarious. Yeah, let's keep the conversation going because I do think this is an important topic, and I think it affects us as founders. It affects us as a community. It affects us as collectors. It's a big topic, and I don't think it's something that gets talked about enough. The only time it gets talked about is when something bad happens, and it really should be something that we figure out in the good times as well. Awesome. Dusty wants some generational BAMF wealth. And Hype says, want to see drawings, can't wait. Oh man, the pressure. I don't know, my drawings are pretty awful in this. But all right, guys, love you all. See you in the Discord. Let's head over to the after party. We'll play some games. Yeah, with that, thank you guys so much. I love you, and we will see you next time. Take care.